Hello learners of the PG Diploma in Environmental and Occupational Health. I introduce myself as Dr. Susmitha Bhaskar, working in the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. The module for discussion today is Environmental Toxicants, Nephrotoxicants. The learning objectives of this module would be to define a nephrotoxicant, the sources of the nephrotoxicants, how they act, the effects of toxicity of these toxicants, and the mode of action and the organs that are affected due to these toxicants. So, environmental toxicants, they can disrupt the biochemical, molecular and the physiological structure and function of living systems, and this can have serious consequences. At the organism level, the following mechanisms are important for the toxicity assessment studies. So, this we have already discussed, that the uptake of the toxicant, how the toxicant is excreted or eliminated from the body, the sites of action, the various organs or the blood forming tissues that are being affected in the process, the metabolism of the individual, and whether these toxins are also being stored in the bone or in various other organs and tissues. So, the toxicants can affect specific target organs. The toxicants, they themselves can be toxic, they can require metabolism before they can cause some kind of a toxicity, they can damage and disrupt the enzyme system and also interfere with the protein synthesis. They can also form certain reactive cells in the body, and they can cause a DNA damage and especially epigenetic changes. Now, we will see whether the nephrotoxicants or those substances which are toxic to the kidneys and to the excretory system, whether they can also have a DNA damage and they can also cause changes in the hormonal signaling. Now, how do we define the term nephrotoxicity? So, this is defined as the adverse effect of substances on the renal function, and it was given by Perezeller in the year 2009. The substances which cause nephrotoxicity, they include the cancer therapeutics, for example cisplatin, the antibiotics like aminoglycosides, metals such as mercury, arsenic and lead, and also drugs of abuse such as cocaine. The kidneys. So, if we have to explain the nephrotoxic action, we have to first understand the kidney and the entire excretory system of the human body. So, the kidneys are a pair of bean-shaped organs, and they are located at the back of the abdominal cavity on each side of the spine. They remove the waste products from the body, and they maintain balanced electrolyte levels, and they also regulate the blood pressure. So, here in this diagram you can see the right and the left kidney, and you can see that they are supplied blood through the arteries, and the venous blood of course is the bad blood which is taken out of the kidneys and then it goes in circulation for purification. Now, the anatomy of the kidney. There is the renal capsule which surrounds each kidney. Then the inside the kidneys we have a number of the pyramid shaped lobes, the outer renal cortex and the inner renal medulla. This is of importance, and the nephrons are flowing between these sections. So, in these two figures, first you can see that there are two bean shaped kidneys, then they are connected by the ureter, and then they are totally connected to the urinary bladder, and then there is an external opening which is referred to as the urethra, where the toxic substances or the excreta, the product comes out. Now, inside the kidneys we have the cortex and the medulla, then the renal pelvis is also there, and you can see that the nephrons are flowing between these sections. Now, the nephrons are the basic structural and the functional unit of the kidneys. We have here in this figure, you can see the Bowman's capsule, the glomerulus and the renal tubule. These are the two important things which are important in the nephron. Then of course, we find that the blood is being supplied through the artery and then collected through the veins. There is a loop of Henle and also the collecting duct. The epithelial cells in the glomerulus and the renal tubule. So they are playing vital roles in determining the permeability of these structures, for example to the ion, to the solute and also to the water. So thus the glomerular filtration and tubular reabsorption function is done. So that is why normally when your kidneys are non-functional, that even the doctors say that even in 2 kidneys, even if one kidney is even 50% functional, then again it is okay. But then when the functional rate it goes down to even below 10 or 3%, then the dialysis is being done, because the blood, the entire blood products, these are all getting filtered, and all the excreta or those products which have to be eliminated from the body, they need to be taken out and they need to be purified through some system. So therefore this system is playing a very important role in doing the glomerular filtration and also tubular reabsorption, where the important nutrients are again taken, reabsorbed, and then it is cycled back. The function. So mainly the main role is to maintain homeostasis and balance in the body. That is why sometimes the doctors will say that the Ayurvedic drugs, or those which are plant based and which are not known scientifically, which do not have a proper scientific research being done, if they are consumed without the knowledge and awareness, then that can cause a problem in the homeostasis and bring about the kidney malfunction. So this means, homeostasis means that they manage the fluid levels, electrolyte balance and other factors that keep the internal environment of the body consistent and also comfortable. The function of the kidneys. First is they are removing waste or those products which are not required by the body. So the waste has to be eliminated and it has to be removed from the body. So that is why always when we have fever or when we are sick, always we are said that take plenty of fluids, even when we were affected with corona. So they say that take lot of fluids, take lot of water, because this is the best mechanism to detoxify your body. Detoxification is one of the main important is taking a lot of water and the fluids, where the removal of the waste can be done easily, and the kidneys are an important organs which are doing this function. Then reabsorption of nutrients from the blood. Certain things may be very important, so that can also be reabsorbed. Maintaining pH. The acceptable pH levels are between 7.38 and 7.42. Below this will result in acidemia and above it alkalemia. Outside this range, the proteins and the enzymes, they can break down and they cannot function because they require a specific pH in order to function. Osmolality regulation. This is the measure of the body's electrolyte water balance, and it is a very important function of the kidneys. In the same way, if osmolality rises in the blood plasma, then the hypothalamus in the brain, this will respond by giving a signal to the pituitary gland. So here you are seeing you have the brain, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. Let me tell you, the hypothalamus is very important in even regulating the temperature also in our systems. So that will give a signal to the pituitary gland, and then you can see the effects. So this effect, when it is giving you the signal, then it will release the ADH hormone or the antidiuretic hormone, and this can lead to increased urine concentration and increased water reabsorption. In this diagram, you can see when the plasma osmolality increases, then the ADH or the antidiuretic hormone is released. That will bind with certain receptors, and then the water will be reabsorbed back into circulation, collecting tubes and in the entire system of the structure of the kidneys. Regulating the blood pressure. This is also a very important function that the kidneys do. Excessive alcohol consumption, smoking and obesity, all this can alter the blood pressure and damage the kidneys over time. The secretion of active compounds. So erythropoietin is a very important component, and that will control the erythropoiesis or the production of the red blood cells. So this figure is showing the effect of erythropoietin on the red blood cell numbers. Now in the low RBC concentration and in the normal RBC concentration, we have compared these both. When there is a low blood count, that is the RBC, we refer this to as anemia. In this, there is low oxygen carrying capacity of the blood and there is decreased tissue oxygenation. When the kidney increases the secretion of the erythropoietin, then there is increased erythropoietin which is stimulating the RBC production and that can come back to the normal RBC concentration levels. So therefore, the kidney is very important. It is playing an important function in controlling erythropoiesis or the production of RBC. It helps to manage the expansion of arteries and the volume of blood plasma, lymph and the interstitial fluid. Calcitriol. This is a hormonally active metabolite of vitamin D and it increases the amount of calcium that the intestines can absorb and the reabsorption of phosphate in the kidney. Kidney toxicity therefore can affect any of these functions and it can be manifested in the variations of the urinary glucose, in the amino acids, protein, changes in the urine volume or pH. Kidney damage is also indicated in the case of changes of the blood urea nitrogen, plasma creatinine and serum enzymes. This is what I said in my previous slides, that when the doctor always asks you to do a blood test, also the serum creatinine, the protein function, the blood urea, all these things, the glucose, urine volume, the pH, also the color of the urine, whether it is turbid in color, whether it is the normal pale yellow, all these factors are taken into account and then the damage to the kidney is analyzed, and then if the patient is seriously sick and if the percentage of that is very low, then the patient may also have to go for a dialysis and he can pull on for a few years, because the waste has to be taken out of the body and it is done through the process of dialysis. Diseases. So these toxic effects and the toxic substances can cause several diseases, both environmental and due to medical factors. Diabetic neuropathy. So this occurs to the damage to the capillaries of the kidney as a result of long-term diabetes. Now you may be wondering, how is diabetes and environmental toxicity related? Because there are several environmental factors which also play a role in increasing the type 2 diabetes. And normally the symptoms of the type 2 diabetic people, they will have headache, they have tiredness, they have nausea, they have swollen legs, itchy skin. And let me tell you, there have also been recent reports where the milk, because India is a country where we consume a lot of milk, dahi, curd and the milk products, and India is one nation which is having a lot of the diabetic individuals, and it is a diabetic nation. So the scientists are pondering upon this aspect, that whether the milk which is produced, this also has an effect on the diabetes and causing this diabetic nephropathy and the kidney toxicity. So now this goes to us, that where is the milk being produced? The source of the fodder or that which is given to the cows or the buffaloes, is it organic in nature? So all these can also play an important role in creating toxicity and bringing about the diabetes. So that can also be, there can be certain environmental factors. In the same way, food production also, the food that we are eating, how it is produced, that can also have an effect on this diabetes and so on. Kidney stones. Nowadays this also you will be seeing that several people are complaining of the kidney stones. So these are actually solid buildup of the minerals in the kidney, and they can cause intense pain and they can affect the kidney function if they block the ureter. So in this figure you can see that these stones, they can also be found inside the kidneys, they can also be found in the urinary bladder, they can also block the ureter, the tube itself, and then they can have, the patients will complain of intense pain. And here you see the crystals, so they can be struvite, they could be calcium minerals and so on. So the type of mineral also the researchers are finding, the type of the stone and where it is being formed. So here again there could be environmental factors, the water that is being consumed, though we are having reverse osmosis and so on, but certain areas where the water is really hard water, that water can also be responsible for creating kidney stones, where they have a very high salt content, and these salts also may be due to the buildup of due to certain other factors. The kidney infections, these are also on the rise. This could be due to bacterial infection, and symptoms can be due to lower back pain, there can be painful urination, there could be fever, changes in the urine. As I said earlier, there could be presence of blood, there could be cloudiness, or the urine itself could be different color and different odor. This can all point and hint to certain infections of the kidney and the toxicity that is occurring due to biological toxicants. Kidney tumor and interstitial nephritis and kidney hydronephritis. These are also certain other diseases that are occurring to the kidneys. So here you see in this figure a normal kidney and a hydronephrosis kidney, where you see that it is swollen in nature, and there is a distended renal pelvis, and there can also be obstruction where the urine flow will not be normal. So this kidney hydronephrosis, it can occur when there is an obstruction and it is preventing the urine from leaving the kidney, and you can see that it would be inflamed, there is swollen and distended renal pelvis, and it can cause intense pain and problems in the patients. Drugs. So now we can see the factors. Now that we have discussed the structure and the function of the kidney and why this is very important for us, this organ is very important, and now we have also seen the diseases which are caused. Now we will see the toxic agents, both therapeutic, environmental, drugs of abuse, how they can cause the nephrotoxicity. Analgesics, using pain medication over a long period of time. Now some people will have chronic headache, they can have migraine without even asking the doctor or the medical practitioners, they just pop in a pill every day. So this can actually result in chronic analgesic nephritis. So you should never take such kind of self medications which can actually harm your systems and organs. Now these examples include aspirin, acetaminophen, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Chemotherapy drugs. So this, of course, it is not in our hands, because when there is a cancer or a cancer forming tissue, and when the cells are growing abnormally, then the doctors take up a call and they decide whether to give chemotherapeutic drugs or radiations, how to go about this. So the most common type of kidney issue in the people with cancer is acute kidney injuries. So it may be due to the chemotherapeutic agents and the drugs that are given to treat the cancerous cells. Alcohol. Some people, they are alcoholics, or they take this on a regular basis, and it is very difficult for them to get rid of this behavior and problem. So this alcohol, it can alter the kidney's ability to filter the blood. It will dehydrate the body, making it harder for the kidneys to redress internal balances. It will increase the blood pressure, that will also hinder the kidney function. Heavy metal nephrotoxicants. So in this figure you can see we have given a kind of a flow chart which consists of the pesticides, contaminated water, mining, you have the contaminated fish products. So these are all nephrotoxicants. Heavy metals, if we take for example arsenic, heavy and high dose intoxication by inorganic arsenic is known to cause acute kidney injury. That can include the tubulointerstitial nephritis and acute tubular necrosis. In the same way, lead, mercury and cadmium, all this, they could enter the contaminated waters from the mining industries, contaminated fish products, and even from the pesticide sources. All this can be nephrotoxicants. Nephrotoxic antibiotics. There are also certain antibiotics which have the kidney toxicity effects. These include neomycin, kanamycin, paromomycin, bacitracin and the polymyxins, especially polymyxin B and the colistin and the amphotericin B. So all these antibiotics also have been shown to cause nephrotoxic effects by the scientists. Cadmium nephrotoxicity. In the 1950s in Japan, the doctors began to recognize an association between environmental exposure to cadmium and increased numbers of women with the kidney disease. They were characterized by the tubular dysfunction, chronic kidney disease and a type of osteomalacia known as the itai. In the real sense, itai is referred to as ouch, ouch. And here you see the patient who is heavily bent, it's totally, it is stooping, the posture is gone and he has a forward tilt, the body has a forward tilt, and this is due to a severe osteomalacia and itai. Later it was found that these workers who were exposed to the industrial exposure to cadmium had an increased risk of developing the kidney disease. And cadmium is also associated with increased risk of developing diabetes, cancer and also cardiovascular disease. And in Japan, it was also noted that those who consumed the cadmium containing rice, they also had this itai problem and osteomalacia. Next is lead nephrotoxicity. So lead contamination is a public health problem, and in many countries it is due to the domestic exposure through the contaminated air, water and soil. Lead it was found in the gasoline, in batteries, in paints, in pigments, in toys, in jewelry, in glazed tableware, in water pipes. But now lead is phased out and it is banned from most of the countries, and leaded gasoline also is no more a serious problem. Acute lead nephropathy. So this is characterized by proximal tubular dysfunction, the development of a Fanconi type syndrome, alterations in mitochondrial structure and the development of systolic and nuclear inclusion bodies. There can also be chronic lead nephropathy. This is irreversible and it is typically accompanied by the interstitial fibrosis, both hyperplasia and atrophy of the tubules, glomerular nephritis and ultimately renal failure. Herbicides and pesticides. Higher rates of chronic kidney disease have been reported in the farm workers, and that has been linked to the heavy exposure to both the herbicides and the pesticides, because when they are working in the farm continuously from morning to evening, daily basis, every day, they are spraying these chemical pesticides or insecticides and herbicides on the entire farm. So continuously this is an occupational hazard and they are inhaling these chemicals, and that can have the chronic kidney toxic effects. Aristolochoic acid. So these nephrotoxic elements can also be present in certain phytochemicals in certain plants and herbs, those that host them. So when eaten, these chemicals can cause the interstitial nephritis and chronic kidney disease, which is referred to as CKD. The herbs containing this acid, it has been linked to the epidemics of the CKD, and one epidemic was known as the Balkan neuropathy because it was observed in the Balkan countries. In this diagram you can see one plant which contains this aristolochic acid. Occupational hazards. So the occupational hazards are many. So those workers who are working in the inorganic sector, for example in the battery sector, in plumbers, in the solders, then the jewelers, dentists also, because they apply the mercury sometimes as the filling, then the fluorocarbon formulators, fire extinguisher makers, then in the antifreeze manufacture and so on. So there has been the toxic nephropathy, toxic effects which have been reported by the scientists, the occupational hazards of working in such sectors. Therefore, conclusion, we need to eat a balanced diet, get enough exercise for ourselves, drink plenty of water, limit our salt intake. We should develop good habits and quit smoking and the alcohol intake. Prevention is always the key to deal with such diseases of toxic environmental origins, and these diseases can be prevented by eliminating or reducing the exposure at the source, or they can be controlled by early detection and diagnosis. I hope you have had a good understanding of this module, that is nephrotoxicants. Thank you for your patient listening.